This
MADC
conference will
quite
now
some
be
time.
recorded.
Pretty much whatever Kendall needs help with, she'll call me. If I can help her, I help her.
Excellent. Thank you, Earl. All right, just going down the list. Esmeralda, you're next.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It's Esmeralda Herrera with the Idaho Counter-Drug Program. And as most of you know, we just partner with coalitions across the state and prevention groups to offer just any kind of support that we can in growing your mission. So I'm glad to be back as a CEC member.
Thank you for your continued service. We're happy to have you back. Okay, and then Jamie, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about why you chose to be a part of the Meridian Anti-Drug Coalition? You should be able to unmute yourself. Yep, perfect.
Okay, I am Jamie Perry and I go to Renaissance with Cole. And one of the reasons why I wanted to join is just because I think it's a really great organization, especially with the activities that I went to through National Honor Society last year about how it actually gets involved with the youth specifically and like gives them resources and helps inform the public about drug usage.
Very good. Well, we're excited to have you and look forward to kind of coaching and mentoring you to set you up for success in this role. And at any time, you can reach out to other fellow sector reps and ask them for their ideas and input. And also reach out to staff, Cheryl and myself, to if there's anything that we can help clarify or you feel like you need more information, we're here to support you and grateful to have you join us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right, so we're gonna move into the PowerPoint that I put together. And here's today's agenda. We've gone a little bit different due to technology as far as Cheryl doing some of the opening and welcome since I have control over the mute button and whatnot. And then as far as meeting minute approval, I'm gonna go ahead and run that as well. So the executive committee meeting minutes from the November 21st, 2019 CEC meeting were sent out via email, and they're also posted on the website. And those, I would need a motion, and you can go ahead and type your motion into the chat box so that we have record of who that is and we're not speaking over each other. And then I would need a second, and then we'll assume that it passes unless anyone has any opposition, which you would need to type in there as well. I have Sarah watching the chat box to help guide the meeting today. Okay. Okay. All right. Excellent. Thanks, you guys. So next up, then I'm going to go over a couple little updates, and then really what I'd like to do today is have some conversation about some of the action planning items. Before we kind of went into the social distancing with COVID, we had already begun to have this conversation and then transitioned in the new sector reps. And so I've made a list of things that are different strategies that we can implement to prevent drugs in our community. And really, I want to open it up to this leadership group to help guide that and create, like I said, an action plan and really put some deadlines and dates to that, and then identify gaps and where we might need more help or resources so that we can continue that forward momentum today. If for some reason there's any kind of technology difficulties and we're not getting the communication through the audio or the video, please use the chat box and or send me an email, and I'll make sure that I get that incorporated into the meeting minutes for today. All right, so let's see here. Whoops, I'm a little behind on this, obviously, the approval of the meeting minutes. So the first few things that I wanted to go ahead and go over today, if any of you are on Facebook, we've been working on really trying to put some better and more effort into our social media. And in talking to city public information officers, what they'd like to see is for us to increase the quality and quantity of usage of our Facebook page, and before we would move forward with like an Instagram or another social media platform. And so if you haven't been there in a while, we've made a few little changes to some of the graphics, and one of the things that I've done is gone through our partner list, all the West Ada schools, and tried to follow and like those pages of our partners and stakeholders. And what I would ask of you today, and I'll ask in the next meeting as well, is if you think of people that you think are key, and it would be good to make sure that we have that connection on social media, to go ahead and type those in the chat box. I already went through all the schools. Many of the elementary schools have PTA or PTO organizations that also have a page, and so I've done that. All of our partners listed on our website, organizations associated with you and the sector that you represent. So just kind of thinking of ideas that way to help us grow our presence on the social media, because that was one strategy that was pretty much unanimous that everyone said that we could really do a better job at. So any suggestions that you have in that area, we would love to hear them. Oh, or types of posts, content for posts. If you have ideas or great graphics, send them our way, and we'll consider those for posting on the Facebook page. And then we've also talked about, there's been some talk on whether or not MADC should have their own Facebook versus being integrated into the Meridian Police Departments. And I can see benefit to that, and I can understand where that could be a good thing. But in my position and as my role as a staff member, but also director of the coalition, it's my duty and obligation to advocate for kind of the independence of the coalition. That might sound a little funny because I'm a city employee, but really the idea of the coalition was for it to have some independence. And so I want to make sure that I'm helping secure that separate identity for the coalition. And so that was my one hesitation in the possibility of integrating in with the city. I'm gonna unmute you. I wish I could see if your hand was up so that I could call on you, but I would like to get some feedback on that. So you can unmute yourself and we'll see how that works. If not, then we can turn a little bit more to the chat box.
Kendall, when you say working through the police department, basically, you guys are actually separate entities. You have the police department has their own Facebook page, and then we have our own Facebook page. So I'm confused what you're trying to allude to.
Okay, sure. So that's correct. That's accurate. What I didn't want to happen was there was a suggestion in conversation for us to consider getting rid of the MADC Facebook page, and the posts that I would create for that with your input. Those posts would be created, but they would be shared on the PD Facebook page versus us having our own. Does that make more sense?
That makes more sense. And yeah, I think one of the things that we talked about at one of the last meetings that we were at corporately was some people don't like law enforcement. They might be anti-drug, but they have some issue with law enforcement. So that might create a hurdle for us in the outreach component. And then two, I like seeing cop stuff I like to see police stuff on the police page, and I like to see anti-drug stuff. There's a really good separation. I think the MADC page does a really good job of highlighting our partnership with Meridian Police Department by integrating our officers and stuff, and actually kind of gives them a positive boost to their PR by showing that they're more than just out there arresting people and writing tickets, but they're actually personally invested in making sure that Meridian is a safe place for everybody. So it kind of highlights their protecting and serving rather than just out there enforcing and citing. So.
Okay, thank you for your input on that. I appreciate the perspective. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add?
Hey, Kendall, Sean.
Go ahead, Sean. Go ahead, and then we'll go to Ann.
I agree. I think it's good to have some independence, and some separation between the two, for a whole lot of different reasons. I think everybody knows that there is the partnership between the police and MADC, but I think at the same time, MADC's mission is a little different, really focused strictly on prevention and the education. So I like the way we're going, and I think long term it'll be a benefit to have our own pages.
Okay. Thank you, Sean. Anne?
I agree. I was going to say just about the same thing. I think that especially as I'm looking at businesses and trying to bring them into the loop and things, I think that, we can always share each other's posts, but I think to have that independence will encourage others to participate more potentially in the long run.
Okay. Good.
Okay, this is Brenda.
Yeah, go ahead, Brenda.
All right, I'm gonna say that I agree as well for all of the reasons that have been stated, and also it gives us more exposure to have multiple ways to get out information. So if we were to be combined, then I think it would limit the ability to get our message out to more people, because we would just be part of that instead of being able to partner with. So I would totally agree and support having our independence as well.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for your input.
You bet.
Anybody else? Any differing opinions? Okay. So I'll have some follow-up with city staff to let them know that we've had this discussion, because I gave them a heads up that I wanted to be sure to provide you guys an opportunity to speak for yourselves as the coalition leaders. And so I'll relay that information. And then, as I said, as we go forward, get on that Facebook page and give me some feedback. I've had a lot to learn. Some of the change in scheduling with lack of events has given me an opportunity to really dig in and learn the nitty-gritty of it. And so hopefully I'll get better and better at it as we move ahead. So, but it's really important that we hear from you as the leaders and the executive committee as to what that content looks like, and provide suggestions. So I look forward to continuing to increase our presence on Facebook. So next up, I wanted to just briefly touch on some budget and grant information. Again, going into COVID, one of the events that was canceled was our second compliance check and shoulder tap for alcohol. And that was grant funded with Idaho Office of Drug Policy. And we have, that's unexpended funds. So they have those funds and we didn't use those. I just put in a grant request for the 2020-2021 year for the Partnership for Success grant through Idaho Office of Drug Policy to fund 2 more alcohol shoulder tap and compliance check operations. And so I should find out, I think mid-June, if we have been awarded that funding. And so then we'll be able to sustain that evidence-based alcohol prevention strategy. So of course, I'll keep you posted on that. Another thing that we're kind of shifting some of the budgeting is we didn't have the spring prescription take back event that was looking very big with a lot of partnership from Crime Stoppers and Better Business Bureau. So we have a little bit of radio funding there. And then we're not running the summer theater ads because of obviously everything that's going on. And so some of that funding is going to go to West Ada School District and additional drug-free school zone signs. I have been in contact with Dawn, and she put out a poll, and we had requests for 45 signs. And so we just put in an order for 50 signs. We'll get a few extras. So we'll be able to get those out to the schools as well. So I just wanted to let you know some of those financial decisions and changes there. Does anybody have any questions on any of those? Okay.
Kim, I'm sorry, I couldn't get my mic on.
Nope, that's okay. I know there's a little bit of a delay. Go ahead, Ann.
Are we looking at rescheduling the prescription take back at any point? I mean, in the next few months or anything?
Yeah, good question. So I've been in contact with our partners for that, which were Crime Stoppers, of Southwest Idaho, Better Business Bureau, and Blue Cross. And because it's such a big event, we had agreed that we would partner for the spring DEA take back, and we'll do that one time a year. So we're not going to reschedule that partnership specifically in that event because we'll follow the DEA's scheduling. We will have and participate in a take back in the fall, but it won't be with those same partners. It'll likely be a little bit smaller. And then we've emphasized our permanent drop-off box in the lobby and the other locations throughout the community and in the surrounding communities, because there are more and more places that have those permanent drop-off boxes. So that's
Great.
kind of how we formed our communication with the cancellation of that event.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Kendall,
Yes.
there was something that I was looking at when I was doing some research earlier this month, and I've never seen them before. I've heard of them, but there's these little pouches where you can put your prescription drugs in them and seal it up. You put a little water, seal it up, and it basically dissolves them, makes them. Is it something where we might be able to take some of the stuff, money that was supposed to go to that, and maybe purchase some of those and distribute them somehow or something?
Good question. So are those the doTERRA packets?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. So through our partnership with Central District Health Department, I believe that was the partnership on that one, they had purchased a bunch of those with their grant funds and shared those with other stakeholders and partners. And so we have some of those in stock, and we do share those at events in a prescription focused giveaway bag. We have our timer cap in it. We have information on the permanent drop-off locations located throughout Region 4 in Idaho. And then it also has one of those doTERRA packets in it. So we do have those, and we will continue that partnership. As far as I know, those packets are still available. If you have ideas on new ways to integrate that into our prevention strategies, totally let me know. And so as of right now, we have partners that have already purchased that with their funding. So it's not something that we've had to look into. Anybody else on the prescription take back or disposal? Okay, good comments. And then another question that I wanted to pose is, as we're all working remotely and carrying on business the best that we can, there's been a lot of opportunity for call-in meetings and webinars. And I just kind of wanted you to think about what experiences you've had and think about what might be a best option for a call-in to expand the availability of our meetings to others that can't actually make it to the police station. I've been a little hesitant over the years to do that, and in the annual satisfaction survey, we've seen a slow rise in a request for that, and it's still relatively low because we have such great capacity and people in the room at the table, and I really feel like nothing can replace that in-person meeting. But as the increase in requests for being able to call in, as that's grown, I'm looking at some different platforms, and I do have some limitations as far as some funding and some city requirements. But I'd like to know what you as different users feel is the easiest to use. And I'm gonna, since we're quickly running low on time, I'm gonna go ahead and have you put that in the chat box, or you can shoot me an email if you think of it later. I had not accounted for the slowed down process being on the webinar. So I'm going to push through some of these items that are not as time sensitive. Okay, so there are, as you can see, there are 7 different items that have come up as I review the annual satisfaction survey and then the conversations that we've had around action planning. These ideas come from all members, not just the executive committee. And there's a little more information on the slide than we necessarily need to dive into today. The video projects across the board was the #1 item that members said that they'd like to see increased with peer-to-peer education, prevention education, and different tips for parents. I've got some of those listed. And so David's already been busy at work, and David, I'll have you kind of just give a little recap of what you're already working on, and then what I'd like to do is get some feedback from you guys on prioritizing which video projects and in what order we'd like to do them. And in asking that of you, I'd like also say that August 1 are our next events, pending they don't get canceled, where we'll be out in the community again. And that would be when we would use an updated MADC promo video. So, and then the rest would be prioritizing if we're gonna do parent tips or peer-to-peer videos, like what topic we might wanna start with. So David, if you wanna go ahead and just give them a little recap of what you're already busy working on, that'd be great.
Okay, so we stumbled across something that the Canyon County Coalition did in conjunction with their school district, and it was basically videos. They were targeted at vaping, but it was youth that had vaped in the past, educators from the school, law enforcement, and someone in the medical field. And it was basically videos talking about vaping in the area. And so what we did was, because Cole is exiting his time with us, and he's going to be moving on to college, we took an opportunity to record some videos with him, I think last week, about being a youth in the coalition, the importance of youth in the coalition, and what he got out of a leadership role, and then also his thoughts on certain drug topics in the city of Meridian. And so the goal is to move along with some of these videos with some of you guys who are sector representatives or anybody else who might be open to sharing their perspectives on drugs and alcohol within the city of Meridian. We're just trying to put another media component that we can put in our little arrow basket to use to get the word out about what's going on with drug and alcohol use and what we're doing on the prevention side to curb it and stop it here in the city of Meridian. So
Excellent. Yeah, and I was happy. I don't love being behind the camera, but or in front of the camera, excuse me. David made it very smooth. I hope that it went well for Cole as well, but we did shoot a fair amount of footage for that first video. So thank you for stepping right up and getting the ball rolling right away to both of you, David and Cole. Anybody have any thoughts on video projects to guide us forward?
This is Esmeralda, Kendall. Hey, I think a good idea would be, I know right now it's kind of difficult with schools being out, but getting some of the feedback from schools, teachers, SROs, or even our law enforcement in Meridian, seeing what the trends are currently and responding to that, so that we're kind of on top of it with videos and education about what's really going on in Meridian.
That's a great idea, to get a little feedback from them, because I am seeing very large amounts of video education and opportunities with everybody being home. So going to the target audience to get some feedback, that's a great idea. And we can definitely put out a survey. I can work with Dawn and some of the other target audiences to see what they might want to learn about, or I could even put it out there on Facebook. So good idea.
Yeah, and that's really great about the target audiences too. I think a lot of times we focus on, obviously with due reason, on youth education, but also just parents or the older communities of any of the abuse in adult populations as well within Meridian. I think that's something that we can hit on as well.
Perfect. Good suggestions. Thank you.
And there has been one other coalition, Upriver Youth Leadership Council. They've actually done some really cool stuff with a local company out of Boise, Idaho. They've put together some amazing content on anti-drinking and anti-vaping lately. If you haven't checked those out, you should look up Upriver Youth Leadership Council. They've done some pretty cool stuff. I found out they're using someone out of Boise. And they're not narrated, they're just, their graphics set to music and stuff. They're pretty cool.
Great. And then the other thing too, David, make sure that you keep the executive committee and all of you for the work that you do within the different sectors. Let us know and keep that communication rolling with how we can help and what gaps there are to help implement these strategies and move forward. Any other comments or suggestions on the video projects? I think we're doing great. We've got plenty of time to get the promo video put together, and the youth video that's already in progress, and then we'll put out a poll and see what target audiences are looking for and where those gaps might be. Okay. So then next up, just real quick, just so that you know some of the other things that I'm working on here, print projects, working on putting together a cannabis brochure. I know that there's been some feedback on the annual satisfaction survey where there have been one or some, I'm not sure, members that feel like there's a bit much emphasis on cannabis prevention. And one of the reasons for that is that we're ahead of policy in Idaho and change. And so I think that the majority of you understand that, but I do like to put that out there, that we're in a unique position where we're not reacting to policy that's not working out so well. And so we're continually working and have that as a priority for the coalition. So, and I'd be happy to talk to anyone offline that feels like maybe the emphasis is not where it should be when it comes to cannabis. So I'm putting that together. And then another one is the youth citation brochure that we've talked about with Dawn and some of the SROs that can be used in the classroom with teachers and parents when they say, what happens when my kid gets a minor in possession ticket and what does that look like? So we have a little brochure for that. So those are some projects. And then as far as assessment and process improvement, Esmeralda and I have been corresponding a little bit back and forth. There was a pretty big gap in communication on my part in that, and looking at ways that we can take some of the measurements that are in the Kaizen, which are the annual assessment that the coalition had done in prior years, and kind of melding or meshing that with existing assessments that we do, including the annual satisfaction survey. And so we're going to be working on that as well together. And we aren't ready to bring that to the group as a whole for feedback. But once she and I work a little bit more on that, we'll have kind of an outline, and we'll want to have your feedback on ways that you think that we can improve that, that process as well. Does anybody have any comments on that? Okay.
Kendall, then, I'll add that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll add that sometimes it seems a little daunting to go through that assessment and planning, but I think it's important for us as the CEC to take a look at some of those areas that really are actually very easy, very generalized components that we can take a look for process improvement, such as like even participation from our committee, the CEC, and how we can expand that within our own sectors. So it seems daunting to think about data processes and improvement, but I think it's just any feedback that we as a kind of a core group within MADC can tackle and say, okay, how much more or where can we be more effective and efficient? So yeah, just kind of a thought for the future.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. And so then next up is pertaining to policy. And as I just mentioned, as far as cannabis, we just really have a lot of opportunity to educate and advocate for safe policy and healthy policy for all community members, but obviously with an extra emphasis on youth. And I'm excited about working on this and continuing to work on this fight with each passing legislative session. We have grown our capacity and our networking with each passing year. And so when opportunities come up to educate, I have great resource lists, and with the help from all of you, we can really expand that. And so there's been some talk, I've already had some conversations with Anne about kind of heading some work on cannabis related policy. I sent her a lot of resources. I sent the preemptive ordinance that the coalition had drafted back in, I believe, 2018, I think, a couple years ago. We've had a lot of changes in leadership, and so I think it's a great opportunity to revisit and re-emphasize the possibilities of what we could do with some policy. And so we're gonna be working on that as we move forward as well. And I think initially we've talked a little bit about, and it's a learning process always for me as well, learning about planning and zoning, density limits, looking at what already exists with alcohol, and we don't know what might happen or how it might happen with policy change, but how can we try to really best educate ourselves and get out in front of it and look at different ways that we could possibly protect the community and have that environmental change that we are always striving for. And so pretty much that's as far as we've gotten in identifying that and sharing that. And so as we look forward, we'll look at the possibility of a preemptive ordinance and what that might look like and that process. And so if you have heard of different policy in different states or cities across the nation that where there's lessons learned or resources that you think might be helpful, please bring them to the group and share them with the coalition, and especially Anne as a contact. She's going to help lead this effort for the coalition and working together. And so does anybody have any questions or comments relating to this?
Hey, Kendall, I don't know if it's really policy, but with the elections coming up, do we need to consider maybe bringing up to the possibly new elected officials what we did before with the Colorado thing?
Yeah, that's very timely of you, Earl, and actually very apropos. I just got an email this morning with a documentary that I hadn't had a chance to process up until a couple hours ago and actually review it and watch it, but it's another documentary produced in Idaho, and it's great. They nailed it. It's similar to Chronic State, but the messaging I feel is stronger and more impactful and more directive and appropriate to where we are as a state. And so I was pretty fired up in here and excited about the educational tool that they've produced. And so once we get just a little bit further past me just watching it and can brainstorm and kind of put together some ideas, I will be sharing it with the executive committee. The producers of the video, I don't know, for those of you that are new, when Chronic State was produced, there were death threats and a lot of backlash. And as the pressure increases and we pass more and more legislative sessions without any change in policy, I think that pressure is likely to increase. We're one of 2 states that don't have any cannabis related policy change in the nation. And so they're opting just to provide this as an educational tool, but don't want to be tagged or referenced in it, which I respect, but I'm very happy about it. And like I said, as we get a little bit further, we can talk about, I'll share it with the executive committee, and then we'll talk about the best ways to share this education and reach out to those connections that we've had, whether it's, we're in the free and clear after the social distancing to host a screening. I would like to see it used in the middle schools and the high schools in every life skills class, and in the high schools and the parent education class, where the youth that get a citation, Dawn's talked about that, have to go to a class with their parent. So there's lots of opportunities to get this information out there, but we'll start with previewing it and then brainstorming and really looking at timing and the elections and the best way to make the strongest educational statement that we can. So great question, and I'm excited, but I just haven't had quite enough time to streamline a plan yet to communicate to you guys.
Kendall, I have a thought on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or something just to add to it. So at our hospital, we do have that adolescent track for inpatient, but we also have the intensive outpatient program for adolescents that opened up as well just recently. And I think that might be a good platform for those kiddos that are in there in our facility and in that intensive outpatient to be able to, depending on what it all entails, it might be a good platform as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, thinking of the different target audiences. So once you guys have screened it, then you can think about the different target audiences and how we can disseminate it, for sure.
Hey, Kendall, Sean. Sean.
Yep, go ahead, Sean.
I agree. I think the more that we can, once we review this new video, and I hadn't heard of it, so I'm excited to watch it. But I mean, anything that we can get in to our youth as far down as possible, as long as they can understand it. You know, we'll have to look at it from a comprehension point, but I think that's a great idea. I mean, also we're talking about policy and ordinance and these things, but we are working as an organization to get back into the cannabis compliance checks within our community. Me being rather new to the community services division, the last one was done prior to me taking this position, but we definitely need to do that and make sure people are doing what they're supposed to do, and we're not finding stuff that's going over that 0.3% THC level. So obviously I'll be working with you moving forward to make that happen. And we've got the chief and deputy chief looking at some funding for that compliance check, as well as working with the prosecutor's office to figure out what their stance is in regards to this. But regardless, I mean, with the mayor being very supportive of keeping Meridian drug free, we need to continue to make sure we're doing all those things: prevention, the education, and the enforcement side to keep Meridian the way it's supposed to be.
Excellent. Yes. Thank you for the update on that.
Talking about those compliance checks, Kendall, maybe you can't say anything, I don't know, maybe nothing said is good news, but how did the CBD oil check go? Do you know?
I do, yeah. So we had 6 samples that we had to send to a lab outside of Idaho because we don't have the facility here in Idaho to process those for quantitative THC testing. And of those 6 products that were purchased and sampled and sent to lab, all of them had the 0.3% or less. I think they were all non-detectable levels of THC, and so that's good, and that's what we want to see. And I think it's a great proactive way that we can, again, stay ahead and establish, similar to alcohol and compliance checks, that we are trying to do the best that we can as a community to make sure that the retailers that are choosing to sell that product are doing what they can to ensure that that product is what it says it is. So, yeah.
Thanks.
You bet. All right, so just a couple other things, and I want to give us time to log off of this meeting, and we're going to have to all connect back into another meeting with another meeting ID for the general meeting. But so one thing that I would like us to tackle and lead is West Ada School District Assessment Fundraiser for the $3,000. And to refresh memories, this is for the optional request for a parent that can't afford it and their child has gotten a citation or they have drug use and they would like to have an assessment done, but they don't have the funding for that. Last year, Dawn checked with her school counselors and got an estimate on about how many of those assessments they had to deny because they didn't have funding. And so we got those numbers, and the total amount is $3,000. And I've looked into a few grants and they don't fit the parameters of the grants. And so I feel like this is one where we could gather and use our capacity and work together to do a fundraiser for this dollar amount. I wanted to put it out during this meeting, and then the next meeting, in the general meeting, once we've identified somebody that would like to take the lead and work on the project, then we can identify people that would like to help and contribute from the general meeting members. So does anybody have any questions or need any refresher on that, the assessment funding?
Do they need just 3, or are they looking to raise as much money as possible?
So the way that it works, the reason why I had put a cap on it is because the way that it's all the partnerships and logistics of the funding and making the donation. The best way to do it so that it is used for that specific purpose for West Ada is for us to use our partnerships and do a fundraiser and have, whether it's an organization or business partner that wants to just write a check for the whole amount, or we do a combination of fundraising, and it can be held in an account that MADC has with the city, and then we write a check to West Ada. It'll be a check that's written to West Ada Foundation, and that's the nonprofit where they help have funding to support then gaps and resources that are needed with the district, and it will be allotted specifically for that assessment funding to ensure that it goes directly to what we raised it for or what the cause was for. And so that's why we have that 3,000 amount. We thought we would start with that based on the numbers from last year. So if anyone has an interest in heading that effort, you think it over. We can talk more offline if you have some questions about specifics. I'd be happy to talk to you about that. You could also put it into the chat box. You can always bring it up and network at the next meeting as well and see if one of the general members would be interested in helping work and partner for that cause. For time's sake, again, moving along, the annual cannabis compliance checks, Sean gave an update on that and where we are in that process. And then at the last, gosh, I think it was the last meeting where we met in person, Nicole had some great ideas for different interactive and educational booth activities. And so Nicole, if we've been in touch a little bit, but it's been sporadic, if you would like to continue to work on that and come up with some ideas and maybe enlist the help of others, or if there are gaps or needs that you have, then we can gather that support either within the executive committee or at the general meeting as well. Is that something that you still want to move forward with, Nicole?
I think for right now, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
So I think for right now, yeah, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was. That's why I wanted to make sure and see if anything had changed.
Yeah, I racked my brain and I tried to remember what we remembered in the past. And my husband said darts, and then I crossed that one out. And then I think we said like a beanbag toss, kind of like what's on this photo right here, but it would be behind the booth, and they would get like 3 chances. And if they got one in, they would get a prize. And while they were tossing them in, they would learn a fun fact or learn a statistic. Years and years ago, we used to have the wheel there that's shown, and we used to have corresponding colored buckets. So if it landed on red, they would get a prize from the red bucket, so on and so forth. I don't know if we still have that at the.
We do. We still have the wheel, and we still have the buckets.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And what we used to do is we would ask the kids questions like, what do you say when someone offers you cigarettes, you know? And I think that another idea that we had was to have like a wall, and you know those balls that are soft and you throw them and they stick to something Velcro. And so they would have, so behind us, we would have a wall, and there would be like a cannabis leaf or like a bottle of alcohol or a vape or like a bottle of pills, and they would throw the ball. And if it landed on like alcohol, we could tell them a fun fact, like actually 80% of Meridian teens say that they don't even drink. And so, or like if they threw the ball and it landed on a bottle of pills, we could say, you know, 200,000 people died of opioid overdose over the past year. So it would be like educational, or it would be a fun fact. It wouldn't all be doom and gloom and negative statistics. But that's all that I can think of from what you and I came up with months ago.
No, that's good. That's what I recall as well. And it's I think that this would be a good project if Jamie, sorry, I was trying to remember your name. I apologize for that. If this would be something that you might be interested in helping out with, or even just providing ideas, because some of the things that us adults think might be a fun, interactive, educational tool might be super lame to some of the youth. So this would be a great opportunity for you to share some ideas and jump in as well if you feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
I also think that we could, you know, cornhole is actually a pretty popular game, even though it's normally linked around drinking alcohol, but that's that may be a weird one, but I think you could do some fun stuff with the cornhole boards, putting a lot of good facts on there, educational stuff. So as they're throwing, they're actually visually seeing some sort of statistic or, you know, a prevention message of some sort. Then you could, on the bags, on the actual cornhole bags, we could do some promo stuff on the bags as well. But I think it's a fun idea, and I like the Velcro balls too. I think that's a pretty good idea.
Excellent. So what I'm going to do is, if you would like to help out with any of these strategies, we'll continue to keep in touch, and I'll be in correspondence via email with each of you. And for those of you that are newer as sector reps and you're not quite feeling like you have your feet on the ground, give it time, and you don't have to jump in right away, and learn a little bit about what the other sector reps are doing and the different variety of ways that you can contribute. And so you can go ahead and use that chat box, and then reach out to me. And then for the next meeting, in the general meeting, as you can see on the agenda that I had sent out for that, that'll have your login information. So you'll need to log out of this one and leave this meeting and then log back into the next one. And each meeting or each month at the general meeting, there'll be an opportunity for you as a sector rep to provide an update on some of the work that you're doing within your sector or some of the projects that you're helping other sector reps with. And it'll also be an opportunity for you to kind of ask for help or identify some of the gaps or areas that we might need some help with and recruit some others from the general membership. Let's see, I want to make sure I caught everything. We've got about 6 minutes before that meeting starts. So unless anybody has anything else, I'm going to go ahead and close out this meeting, and then we'll get logged in for the next meeting. And it'll be a little bit of some of the same thing, but again, opportunity to expand the involvement from other general members as well. Thumbs up from everybody, we good?
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, you guys. I appreciate you coming in early. We'll see you in a few.
Thanks, Kendall.
Thank you.